First of all, thank you for being the lucky ones to be on this bus. So I want to point out a couple things that are important about the two different wines. If you turn the sheet over to the 05, you'll see that we were 42% Red Mountain when we made the 05. Our focus is Red Mountain for virtually all of our wines. But when we were making this wine in 05, this particular wine, or the grape variety percentages you see from these particular vineyards, we were using 100% new French oak. And it was barrel fermented, okay, and I'll explain the winemaking process. But we felt, even though we were getting great scores, that it wasn't, we couldn't control these vineyards the way we wanted to, for the most part. Only one was Sagemore, which is the oldest white wine vineyard in Washington State, did we have some control over. The others, we fought with the growers, and we decided we needed to control our own fruit, much like what Marty said. Now, if you know Dick Boucher, mid-Yakima Valley, and further up the valley in a much cooler site, Dick only has red wine grapes. But we planted a vineyard with Dick 7 years ago, so now if you turn it over to the 08, you'll see that we use only 10% now from Red Mountain. And we now, 75% of this wine is Boucher, Semillon, and Sauvignon Blanc, the only white wine grapes Dick has with us. And this is the third vintage now we've used our own grapes so we can really focus on making the wine in the vineyard. And we still have control over that block of Sagemore, another 15%, all right? But now this wine in 08 is 60% new French oak barrel fermented. We don't need so much oak now because we have more expressive grapes because we now control the production of those grapes. So let's go backwards for a moment and talk about, besides what we do in the vineyard, we hand-pick all of our grapes. We still hand-pick into 30-pound lugs that stack on each other, so there's no weight in the grapes. We shrink wrap those, put them in a refrigerated car, and keep them refrigerated till it's full, and we drive it to our winery in Woodinville. So the grapes are pristine condition, no weight, no crushing, no juice, they're in perfect shape. We double hand sort, and we don't crush. We whole berry, lightly press them, and we pump all that juice into bracketed stainless steel tanks where we cryo, cold, we cryo-macerate. Walla invented the process of cryo-maceration. It's what created Walla Suave, crisp and clean. When you cryo-macerate, you chill for 36 to 48 hours, and all the solids settle. So then we rack just free run off the solids into the barrels to barrel ferment. And that's how you get crisp and clean, which is why Walla Suave and all Suaves are crisp and clean. Then the barrel fermentation gives us rich, textured, and creamy. But it's perfectly interfaced, rich, textured, and creamy, and crisp and clean. You can't get that by doing them separate and then blending. It doesn't work. You have to do this process in the winemaking. Barrels don't over-oak wine. Winemakers over-oak wine. We stay in those barrels 3 or 4 months. It depends. And when the wine, and by the way, Surly, Amelie's, Batonnage, we stir it up once a week because we want that rich texture. But we don't want it over-oaked. We just want the vibrancy, if you will, the unfermented sugars in new oak. We want the vibrancy you get from new oak in the wine, but we don't want it over-oaked. So 3 or 4 months, depending on the vintage, back into stainless steel. That's how this wine's made. Okay? I think you'll see the differences, but you'll also be able to see in all of these 05s how in this state, Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc can really develop. I do want to make one more point. Ours is Sauvignon Blanc dominant, where the other two producers are Semillon dominant. And I think winemakers can be scared of Sauvignon Blanc. And the reason I say that is people are used to the grassiness in Sauvignon Blanc, and a lot of people think that's what Sauvignon Blanc is or has to be. And the fact is that's methoxypyrazine, all right, which is a component that gives you the grassy smell, which if you Google that, you'll see that it's frankly from underripe Sauvignon Blanc grapes. All right? And that's what creates the grassy. It also is what gives the herbal in some red wines. And it's pyrazine. However, if you let Sauvignon Blanc get too ripe or too mature, you get mercaptomethone, which I'll give you exact, it's p-mentha-8-thiol-3-1, which is that...
You're not looking at your notes on that.
No, I haven't. I never remember that. It's that cat's piss. We've all heard it, right? What we've figured out is that you have a 2-day window. 2 days, that's it.
So you're saying the cat piss is from overripe.
Overripe.
And the green
is from underripe.
Is from underripe.
But here's what we find. You have to be in the vineyard, and these guys can tell you that Chris Upchurch is in those vineyards every single day, literally, when we get close. And he is testing in the vineyard with his $2,500 thingamabob, and that's my business partner and our executive winemaker. That's what I call it. He just sticks this thing into the juice and it reads everything on it. The thing costs $2,500. It's about the size of my hand. But then he tastes the grapes. And so you can be technically ripe with the right sugar and the right pH and the right acidity, but the maturity, the physiological ripeness in the grapes aren't there. But once Sauvignon Blanc reaches physiological ripeness, you have 2 days, max. You've got to pick now, or you're going to move towards cat's piss. And it's tough, and winemakers are scared of this. And in my opinion, they pick Sauvignon Blanc early because they are more scared of having the cat's piss. Sorry to use these words, folks, but the other ones are so hard to repeat. Mercaptomethone, all right? And so they pick early at the risk of not getting the other, they get grassy. And this is just our opinion. And we've proven it. Our wine doesn't have either grass or the other, and it's perfectly ripe. I had some guy accuse me yesterday of not being over-oaking and covering up the Sauvignon Blanc. And I didn't want to say anything in front of all the people he was sitting with.
So what's the impact of overcropping when it intersects with these underripe and
I don't know. We don't overcrop, so we've never had that experience. We way undercrop.
But theoretically, wouldn't overcropping also lead to issues of greenness and...
Sure,
it tends to, yeah.
Because
if
you're overcropping, you're not fully ripening.
Yeah.
I mean, you get quicker ripening when you crop lower, unless you use clones that are later ripening and then undercrop, which is what we're trying to do because we planted other clones.
The other thing about overcropping and balanced yield is that in Washington, we've got a really great fruitfulness, and we tend to have a very good flowering. So in the vineyard tour, you saw everything going through flower. We have a really good flowering. And this year, we'll probably drop, in most years on our vines, we tend to drop half of the natural yield on the vine. So when you have a really good yield like we've got at our wineries, you're going to end up taking all the late fruit and the overripe fruit, the sunburn and the green fruit off, so you can harmonize that fruit in the vineyard long prior to harvest into the sweet middle, the perfect middle fruit. So you're immediately improving that. So overcrop fruit tends to have overripe, ripe, and underripe fruit all in a big pile. And then there's a lot of problems in it.
When you're talking about the 2-day window, I mean, that also raises the issue of being able to pick, of finding the labor. And having it be able to come to work.
Fortunately, we work with wine growers rather than farmers of grapes, and we pay a lot for this, but the wine growers we work with are more than accommodating, and we have a trucker who only trucks for us. He's an independent. The rest of the year he does something else, and he has his truck sitting in his backyard, and he just does this for us, and he's at our beck and call every day of the year during this time.